Hi, friends. Welcome back to my channel, the Podcast Nate channel. As you may have noticed, I've been sprinkling in a little variety of content as opposed to just episodes of the Sobriety Diaries.
See, I didn't notice that.
I started the new weekly talk show with my friend Angela Pugh. We are live on this channel and my Facebook and her Facebook, which I will link below for you, live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. It is a weekly show where we explore pop culture and trending topics. Of course, we have the Sobriety Diaries episodes. I'm going to be doing some more vlog and lifestyle content, and also some tips and tricks or advice in my area of expertise: video production, podcast production, vlogging, audio, which is what we have today. When I launched the Sobriety Diaries, I really spent a good amount of time educating myself and teaching myself the art, if you will, of the podcast platform. I was a big podcast fan for a really long time, and of course had my favorite shows and really understood what I wanted my podcast to sound like, what I wanted, of course, the theme to be, and the format of the show. So I spent over 3 months really educating myself and understanding audio production and the equipment that is involved, and making sure that I would be able to launch this show in the right way and that it would embody what I wanted it to, and to put that out there, hopefully for others to love as well. So I was able to take the Sobriety Diaries from launch to being in the top 5% globally within the first 90 days. So I really think that I have really great knowledge to share, some tips and tricks that I will share with you today. And we're going to break this down into two parts because I've got a lot to say. So today's video will be numbers 1, 2, and 3. And maybe next week, maybe the week after,
But then came part 2 of Dad's plan.
round out the list of all of my tips and tricks for launching your podcast.
What's the number one rule?
Choosing the right concept or idea is really what's going to attract your audience or attract the listeners that will hopefully stay committed to your show. So I put together a few tips or tricks to really narrow down your niche and help to clarify your message. So first, you definitely want to define your goals. So why do you want to start a podcast to begin with? Is it important to get your message out? Do you have a small business that you want to help spread the word about? Are you a young professional who wants to share industry secrets or tips or tricks? So define your why first. Podcasting has a lot of benefits for a particular brand or a business, whether it's your own business or one that you're working for. But it's important to be realistic about your goals. So we need to set smart and achievable goals that are realistic, both in the timeline and achievability, if you will. I personally wouldn't recommend having one of your goals be to achieve fame or to make any sort of large amount of money from a podcast.
I'm poor?
Yep.
You can make money from a podcast. And if you continue to increase your downloads and increase your audience, and that they're coming back each week to hear what you have to say in your new episode, you can make money, but it's not a good idea in my opinion, to have that as one of the main whys or one of your main goals, at least to start with. Podcast popularity and building your audience is definitely a slow burn, if you will, a marathon and not the sprint. When picking your topic or your theme, it's important to pick something that you are excited about on a regular basis or have a large knowledge base already. It's challenging to, in addition to all of the editing and scheduling and publishing, in addition to the necessary tasks that are involved in weekly podcast production, if you are having to study or educate yourself on any particular topic, there's just not going to be time. So it has to be something that you're passionate about and that you have at least a basic knowledge base on. The more you enjoy your topic, the less likely you are to sort of fade out or lose interest over time. You want to be as specific as possible to be able to narrow down that niche audience. It helps with SEO and searchability when people are looking for a new show or for answers on a particular topic. You want yours to be at the top of that search list. So being as specific as possible is definitely helpful. And you really want to drill down what makes you different and what sets you aside from all of the other podcasts in your particular theme or niche. Pro tip, when planning or deciding what your topic or theme will be, create a content calendar and try to come up with 15 to 20 episodes. For me, that was a good way to judge sort of how vast the topic is or how much range there will be in deciding topics for each episode and how your knowledge on your particular topic factors in to each of those sort of themed episodes or episode topics. So just as a few examples, when we're niching down or being as detailed as possible, when I say that, instead of just a mental health podcast, perhaps it's mental health for adolescents or mental health for divorcees or whatever sort of theme or category you fit into. Listen, there's an audience out there with the same problems, with the same questions, and that audience will be able to find you even quicker. Number 1.5, I think, is naming your podcast. Of course, you want it to go along with your theme or topic and be representative of both the content that you plan on putting out each week, but also the sort of format of the show or the conversation style that you plan on putting out there into the pod world each week. So when you're naming your podcast, is it strictly solo episodes? Are they with a guest each week? Is it a mix of both? Is it a roundtable or panel discussion? So you want to consider words like conversations with blank or my thoughts on blank. One of my personal favorites, all you ever need to know about blank. It's a good hook. Again, very specific with the title of your podcast and as representative of the overall concept as possible.
You want to recap it?
Number 2, equipment. Listen, you do not have to buy expensive equipment to have a good podcast.
You do not have to buy expensive equipment to have a good podcast.
Are we clear on that?
You do need to focus on your audio to make sure that it's listenable and enjoyable, but enjoyable audio is not only achieved through expensive equipment, 100%. Lots of popular podcasts have a very basic setup.
These new microphones are just incredible.
So, a good podcast microphone is intended to enhance the audio of your voice. So, the less background noise or the less audio interference when you're speaking, the easier your editing process will be and the easier your production essentially will be on the back end. The two main types of podcast microphones are a dynamic microphone or a condenser microphone. A dynamic microphone works best for podcasting, in my opinion. They pick up the lower frequencies. It drowns out all of the noise in the room around you, even an AC or a heater, little taps or bumps on the desk. They really do a good job of only picking up your voice directed right into the microphone. A condenser microphone has a bit more sensitivity. It will pick up group conversations. It will also pick up noises in the room. I started with a condenser microphone, and you could literally hear my dog walking on the hardwood floor.
There'll be no more tap dancing for you, mate.
Condenser was a no-go for me. In my opinion, they're not really ideal for spoken word recordings. Now, we also have to choose between a USB connection or an XLR connection. An XLR is what you'll see on stages. It's typically what you think of when you look at a professional microphone connection. It's got that three-prong connection that you plug directly into the back or the base of a microphone, usually that singers or performers on a stage will use. Now, if you're using an XLR, most times you'll need a cloud lifter or some sort of go between the microphone and your computer to either increase the gain or enhance the compatibility with your computer. My preference is the good old USB connection. It's plug and play really with your computer. It's easy to take your equipment on the go if you're traveling or if you're meeting someone on location to record. It's super easy and much more user-friendly or tech-friendly for those who are just starting out. Now, the beauty with some microphones is that you have the option to do both. So if you're just starting out and you want to use the USB option to take advantage of that sort of plug and play and the ease of connection, but as you graduate and learn more about audio production or perhaps increase your equipment budget, you could always graduate to that XLR connection. Which leads me to my first choice, my baby, my favorite podcasting microphone, the Samson Q2U, which has the USB and the XLR connection option. It's also super affordable. You can get the starter pack, which comes with a tabletop mic stand and both the USB and XLR connection for, I think, around $65 when I checked right before I recorded this. That's via Amazon here in the US. It also has really great ratings. And like I said, my favorite microphone, I purchased it shortly after that condenser microphone mishap when I first started. And I've been using it for over a year and a half now. And I absolutely love it. So again, that's the Samson Q2U. Behind me, I have the big brother to the Samson Q2U. It's the Samson Q9U, which I will hook up to an XLR connection when I am recording solo episodes via a Zoom recorder, which is the next piece of equipment that I want to talk about. So the Zoom PodTrack P4 podcast recorder, it's a battery-powered 4 microphone input and 4 headphone output. You can connect a mobile phone for interviews. It has a USB output for remote interviews. It has a sound pad that you can enter pre-recorded sounds or interviews. And it also has a built-in cloud lifter, like I was talking about earlier, to increase the gain or to connect your XLR connections. Again, you can hook up 4 microphones for a group interview. It's up to 3.5 hours of record time. Just a really great piece of machinery, especially if you are recording podcasts in person with other people, as opposed to how I do the majority of the Sobriety Diaries interviews, which is via Zoom virtually. So, all in all, equipment wise, depending on if you are recording in person or virtually or solo episodes, with the exception of a microphone, you can really get started for around $100 or even less in some situations. So, again, you do not need to break the bank to start your podcast or launch your podcast or even develop your podcast and continue to learn. Again, you really don't need to upgrade your equipment at all. But trust me, it starts to become a little addicting. So be careful there too.
Trying to provide for her shopping addiction and crack.
Remember, the quality of your content far outweighs the quality of your equipment when it comes to returning listeners and building your audience. And finally, today, number 3, we need to pick our podcast recording software and our distribution platform. So we've all heard of Zoom and GarageBand, but have you heard of Podbean or Buzzsprout? The hell are those? These are our distribution platforms, and they are super important and downright necessary for getting your podcast to all of the most popular platforms, really where your listeners are going to go, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. And picking one that is going to suit your needs is super important. So let's run them down. So I'm going to highlight 3 popular recording software and 3 popular distribution platforms and discuss some pros and cons of each so we can kind of get a lay of the land and what is out there for both paid and free services. So starting with recording and editing software, let's start with Audacity. Most of us have probably heard of the recording and editing software Audacity. It is free. And in most cases, you get what you pay for.
Oh, no, he didn't.
No, Audacity has some really great features. It's an open source audio recording and editor with really some pro level features, and it really has more than enough. You can produce some really great audio with Audacity. It does have a sharper learning curve than GarageBand, which is also free for iOS devices, but there are a ton of tutorials on YouTube, and I mean a ton. So if you have some time to put into learning the software and practicing a lot, hey, it's free. Give it a shot. No hate at all to Audacity. It's a really great platform. I used it for a long time. Moving on to Riverside FM. You've probably seen advertisements for it everywhere since everyone's starting a podcast these days, but Riverside really focuses on the higher quality digital video and audio files, and especially if you are doing virtual interviews. So this is a paid service, but you can get one of their lower level packages, I think for around $9.99 a month. So Riverside allows you to record local audio and video files, even if you don't really have a great internet connection. And your guest will have the ability to download their own files and send them over to you. If you run into any technical issues while recording, you can take live call-ins, you can live stream to social media, you can edit the videos within the browser, and the files are continuously uploading to the cloud during recording. So you never have that shit your pants feeling of losing your work.
Oh God, I think I shit my pants.
Or closing out of the window before everything uploads. But Riverside really prides themselves on their studio level recordings. Similarly, I wanted to touch base on Squadcast. So Squadcast is a little more expensive than Riverside. I think you can get around $12.99 or $13.99 per month, also for one of their lower level packages. Also studio level recordings that also get uploaded to a cloud. They really pride themselves on the quality of their content as well. Squadcast makes it very easy to set up and record remote interviews, and they really, again, capture that high quality, what they call lossless audio.
Say, Bob, did I detect a slight lisp in your voice?
Squadcast sound quality is a little more elevated because it records local WAV files to each person's computer. So the initial setup is a little more complicated. And if your interviewee is not as tech savvy as you are, you may run into some difficulties. Again, tons of tutorials online. If you're willing to make an investment and you want these really studio level recordings, give Squadcast a try. So these are our recording platforms, but we also need a distribution platform. And sometimes some programs offer both, and other times you got to split them up. I personally use a combination of Riverside FM and Zoom to record my podcast, and I use Anchor as my distribution platform. Now, Anchor is a free service, and they were actually just purchased by Spotify. So it is Anchor by Spotify. So that gives it a little reputation and a little qualification, right? For being a free service, they do a ton of things really well. First of all, since they do partner with Spotify, you have the option to use any song in Spotify's library in your podcast episode, which is huge. They also offer you the ability to monetize your podcast right from the get-go. So you don't have to have any listener minimum or minimum downloads. They offer you that from the beginning, which is super cool and really draws a lot of podcasters to the platform. We also have platforms like Podbean and Buzzsprout, which they're super similar, and no offense to Podbean or Buzzsprout or Podbean. Great services. They are paid services, however, and with the exception of a few more analytics and a bit of the elevated audience demographics and services from the analytical side, I personally don't see a huge difference. So if I can get something for free that is offering pretty much the same service, I'm going to go there. So again, Podbean and Buzzsprout, great services. I think you can use their platforms each for around $10 a month. So it's not going to break the bank. And if you are looking to have those really heavy analytics to understand who your listeners are, great, go for it. So those are just a few examples of the many, many, many options that are out there for you to record, edit, and distribute your podcasts. And we really have so much more to talk about. Make sure you come back next week when we get into the good stuff, recording your podcast, branding your show, marketing, and finally, we're going to get to launching your podcast. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. Again, we'll be back to continue this series and many more tips and tricks for not only launching your podcast and recording and editing, but building your brand, developing your audience, looking at your analytics and understanding the demographic of your listener, so much more. Thank you. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when I upload more. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. So you may have heard of sites like Podbean or BuzzFeed, Buzzsprout, and they will distribute your podcast